My name is Mozon, and I'm going to tell you a story about people who would do it, who said, yes, we would do it. When I heard that the nation of Ukraine had been invaded, and I heard that the everyday people, the citizens, the civilians, the men and women decided that they were going to take up arms to protect and to fight and to free themselves from the invading oppressor, I said, I get it. I get it. Because when I look at the history of my people, I know what it's about fighting for your own freedom. My people fought for their own freedom on the soil of this nation. And a great poet by Paul Laurence Dunbar wrote a poem about some of them, and I just want to read a portion of that poem. It's from the poem called The Colored Soldiers. They have slept and marched and suffered beneath the same dark skies as you. They have met as fierce a foemen and have been brave and true. And their deeds shall find a record in the registry of fame, for their blood has cleansed completely every blot of slavery's shame. So all honor and all glory to those noble sons of Ham, the gallant colored soldiers who fought for Uncle Sam. Now, from whence comes these colored soldiers? Why, these are the ones who were in bondage here in the land of the free. These are the ones who sowed and tended and reaped the tobacco, the cotton, the sugarcane, and the rice. These are those who stepped out of involuntary servitude into voluntary service to fight with the Union. These are a person like Jeremiah Watkins. I mean, Jeremiah Watkins, he didn't know much. He just knew rice. I mean, he knew how to tend and grow that gold rice that was famous down in Charleston, South Carolina way. He knew rice. I mean, his mama had told him that some generations back that they had come from across the water, but all his mama really knew about that was a few songs and how to cook certain things in certain ways. Good. And his daddy had carved these animals. And daddy called him a lion, and that was a giraffe, and that one is a elephant, and that was a buffalo, but these kind of things did not exist in South Carolina. All Watkins really knew was rice. And one day he was tending to the rice when all of a sudden the Confederate soldier came and snatched him up, and the next thing you know he was doing, he was digging ditches and building fortifications for the Confederates to resist the Union. Jeremiah didn't know much, but he had heard that this war that was going on had something to do with preserving the Union and freeing the slaves. He didn't know what a Union was and why they needed to be preserved, but he sure did like the idea about the freeing of people who were enslaved. And he really wanted to get away and join the army of the Union so he could fight for the freedom for him and his family. But he didn't know much of what he could do. But one night, on a very star-filled night, Jeremiah Watkins ran. He got free. And he found his way to one of the Union camps. And he said, "Sign me up, boss, I'm ready to go." And for some reason, they didn't want him. They regarded these freed people as contraband of war. And they just would gather together in the camp And the Union fed them and clothed them and took care of them, but wouldn't let them fight. Until after the Battle of Antietam, President Lincoln decided that he was to do this proclamation in September about 1863. He was to do this proclamation called the Emancipation Proclamation that says, beginning January 1, 1863, all slaves in the Confederate steppes will be free. So, of course, on New Year's Eve, people gathered in churches, all the places where they could gather, and at close to midnight, they were praying. They called it a watch night. And they would pray because they said, at midnight is the dawn of freedom. The problem was that the freedom was only experienced by those persons where the Union Army had control. So a lot of folks were free on January 1st, 1983, but they couldn't do anything about it. Finally, around May 1863, they decided the War Department said, let's make this the company of colored soldiers. So over 200,000 persons in the contraband camp now became Union soldiers. And they got in the fight. And they beat up the rebels as much as they could, and they marched. And they were glad to have their little copies of the Emancipation Proclamation. And as they marched into towns and marched into plantations, they read them and said, y'all are free. Jeremiah Watkins loved being able to fight for the freedom. But time went by, and a lot of folks started moving to Texas because Texas was the furthest west of the Confederacy. So many folks took their persons that they owned or bought they owned and right off to Texas, and they were still kept in bondage. Until finally, in 1865, General Gordon Granger, commanding a group of colored troops, marched into Texas, down in Galveston. And he pulled out a paper, it was General Order number 3, that said, people of Texas, be informed that according to the proclamation of the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. And this is inclusive of complete equality and personal rights. Jeremiah Watkins had marched and fought for his people to become free. Now, he ended up his service there in Galveston, and he happened to see this young woman out there in the sugarcane dancing with freedom. And for many years afterward, on June 19th or Juneteenth, they danced the freedom dance. I hope the men and women of Ukraine who are fighting for their own freedom will soon dance the freedom dance, because it will take